So just a little bit of context for today. In South Carolina, the EdFi data standard will be used, as many of you know, to bring together data from multiple source systems. PowerSchool being a very important data source since it's a student information system that districts are using statewide. And our unique way of using EdFi involves, as you can see here, a state-provided operational data store, or ODS, for each district, from which certain data are sent up to the state level ODS. Now, other states operate under a model where there's only a state ODS and districts' source systems push data to that central ODS. So ours is a little bit different, actually a lot different, and we anticipate a lot of utility for districts in having their own ODS managed by a district data governance group. So when publishing data to an ODS, it's important to know that the system that is the data source, so the system such as PowerSchool, needs to connect through an application programming interface, or API. An API allows applications to talk to each other. And so in this case, it's basically the code that translates the data coming from the source system, so the data, for example, coming from PowerSchool, so that it can be published to the ODS, which is accessible with a URL, an API URL, a key, and a secret. Okay, so that's just a little bit of context. And we're going to demonstrate for you today the steps that we'll be asking district PowerSchool administrators to take in February. Okay, and these steps are to make a successful connection between PowerSchool and your district's ODS API, and also to publish 2021-2022 PowerSchool data to your district's ODS. So that's what this demo is going to be for today. The scope of what we'll look at today is just those two things, making that successful connection to the API and publishing PowerSchool data to your district's ODS. We will not have time today for much discussion on what to do if you see errors and dependencies, for example. That will be a great topic for another office hour date. But given our time, this is really a good amount for us to demonstrate for you here today. Okay, and if you guys have questions along the way, please feel free to use the chat. Feel free to open up with your mic. I will say we're going to see a lot of steps here, so we'll take a second. So bear with me. Some of your questions might be answered as we go through, but the chat is a great place to put some of those. And we have members of our team here who may be able to either stop me if some of those need to be answered midstream, or if there's something that I can't answer, hopefully there will be somebody else here on the call who can also help. So a couple things, by the way. Once a connection to the API is made and data has been published, you're going to see that data continues to publish automatically to the ODS from PowerSchool, and there is a data publishing dashboard in PowerSchool that can help you easily confirm that this is happening and whether or not something needs attention. So we're going to see, this is an example of what that dashboard could look like, and that we'll kind of get to that after we've taken some steps that need to be taken first. With regard to credentials, I mentioned a moment ago that the connection is made, the access is only given if you have that API URL and a key and a secret. District ODSs are operationalized each academic year using the district's secure EdFi key and secret, as well as an EdFi API URL. And we're just going to call those the credentials. Okay, so when we say credentials, that's what we mean here, for a given year. And in the past, for those of you who may have connected for last year's data, maybe you did that over the summer, maybe you did that early in the fall. I think all districts have done it, but when I say if you were the one who did it, it may have been someone else in your district. It may have been you who took those steps. You might remember that we used a secure share file to transfer those to you. So that may actually change. We may be using that. It might be some different method of transfer, but regardless, you're still going to have that key secret and URL. For our purposes today, we'll assume a similar delivery method. And just a word on credentials, they are usually copied and pasted directly from that delivery location into the fields where they are needed. And we'll see in our demonstration where those would actually be needed. One last thing, and this is just so you know, when it comes time in February for you guys to take these steps, we will have documentation available to you. It's under revision right now and just about ready for you, but you will also need to have this state reporting version 21.12.1.0 as your as a latest version. So you need to at least have this version for these steps to work, for you to be able to publish this academic year's data. We're going to go ahead and start the demonstration. So I hope you can all see. I'm here in PowerSchool. Let me know. Can everybody see that? I'm in one of our test servers here.
I can see it.
Okay, awesome. All right, so the first step toward connecting to the district ODS and API is to make sure that a profile is set up for the academic year. So when I get into PowerSchool, I'm going to look for a couple of things. First, I see, okay, this is the year that I want. And I also need to make sure I'm at the district office. So here I'm in a school. I'm going to change that. So I'm in the district office. All right. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do to set up that profile is go over in my navigation to Setup and select System. And I'm going to go down to our server section and select System Settings. And on this page that appears, there's a link here. It might not be in exactly the same spot on your page, but it's called Plugin Management Configuration. And you'll notice that it says here under the description, or in the description column, define settings for plugins. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go to Plugin Management Configuration. All right. So once we get here, we're going to locate this PowerSchool Data Exchange DEX. Could be a different number plugin on your screen, but this is what it's called. And you'll need to make sure that this box is checked to enable it. So if it's not, let me show you what you would do. So let's say, for example, it were not enabled, such as here, I'm just going to click on a sort of a random one right here. What would come up is this screen, and you would say, okay, enable, you would click that, and it would take you back to the page here, and your box would be clicked. Okay, so I won't click that other
After you read all the fine print, right, Wendy?
Right, yes. Be sure to do that if you want. Or you can just do it. So we're gonna, now that that's checked, I'm gonna click on the plugin or the link to the plugin. Okay, so on this page that comes up, it says PowerSchool Data Exchange DEX Setup. Okay, you have some information about the plugin. All right, we're gonna come down here. So what we're gonna do is click on Profile Configuration. There are actually a couple things that we're gonna do. Notice that this description says add a new profile or edit an existing profile. So what we actually need to do, remember we're setting up a new profile for Ed5 for the given year. We have found that it's helpful, it could be helpful to have previous profiles from previous years disabled, not deleted, but disabled. So we're actually going to edit one, we're going to disable one, and we're going to create a new one if we have others that have been created. And you probably do because everybody has done their Ed5 onboarding. So we're going to click Profile Configuration. Okay, great. So here I have one that's already enabled. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is click Edit, and I'm going to click Off and save that. Okay, so that one is now disabled. And then now I'm going to add a profile. So I'll click Add Profile, and we have a naming convention that we'll use to name our new profile. It looks like this. I'll just kind of use some X's and Y's here, then I'll change it up to show you a better example. So it'll be edfi underscore, and we'll just put XXX, X underscore. Okay, so the X's here, we're going to replace these with the 4-digit district code. And the Y's are going to be for the academic year. And by that, I mean the year in which the majority of the students will graduate. So for 21-22, we would put 2022. And let's just make up we'll just put like 9999 for our example here. Okay, and I'm going to click Save. And I've created, or I've named a new profile. There it is. All right, there it is down at the bottom. Okay, so next I'm going to I'm going to make sure, let's see, the profile type here, it should say what you see here. That shouldn't change at this point in time. So it's probably going to say edfi_sc_3. Okay, and I'm going to check and make sure that my profile has been successfully added by following some steps. So I'm going to go back over to setup in system. And if I scroll all the way down, I should have this section called data exchange. Okay, when I get there, I'm going to go to general setup. There's some other useful links down here that you guys may explore in time. And today we'll look at a few, but we're going to start by going to general setup. And we're just going to make sure that our profile is in fact there. So this page is going to come up and I can adjust some settings. We'll talk about all these in a second. But if I look right here where it says profile, this is my only option because I disabled the other one. If I had not disabled it, it would also be an option and I would have to be careful maybe, not to click it, but we want to make sure it's disabled anyway. So there you go. My profile is there. Okay. So one quick note here in our documentation for this, we are going to have there are going to be a few little troubleshooting tips. So if you were to get here and you think, well, what if it's not there? What do I do? We have a tip for you there. The first thing that seems to be helpful if for some reason it doesn't appear is to try reloading the load server reports. And I'm not going to go, just because of time, I'm not going to go through all the steps to do that, but we do have the instructions in our documentation, for how to troubleshoot that by reloading the load server reports. And if that doesn't work, right now the best course of action would just be to reach out to one of us on the data collection team, and we could see if we could help think through some next steps, or if it's something that requires, maybe even reaching out with a support case or something like that. Okay. All right. So hopefully you're still with me. I know this is a lot of little steps here, but let's take a look at this section. We have here, we have some stuff. So general options, system enabled, all this. All right. So for system enabled, we certainly want that to be on. For logging options here, this is actually, we did this a little bit differently when we onboarded. We're actually going to uncheck all of these if they're checked, or if they're blank, just leave them blank. And the reason is we want to avoid slowing down our data publishing, and we don't really need these unless we wanted to investigate things for some reason. We could go back in and change that. But for right now, we're just going to leave those because that'll give us the best processing that, I guess, keep things from being slower than they need to be. For the job processing frequency, this actually might be going away at some point. We can actually ignore it. The job processing is going to go as quickly as it can anyway, but if we want, we can just set it to high if it makes us feel a little bit better for right now. And then for purge policy, okay, so for purge policy, and I'm sorry, I heard some. Does anybody have any questions? Are you guys with me so far? Okay.
Wendy, I haven't seen very many questions in the chat, but it's useful to go through these settings just so everyone understands what they are, and it's not just a field on a page that is kind of meaningless.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I agree, because it can look, it's like, what is this purge policy? So I agree, and I hope this helps you guys a little bit when you get in here and you're doing this on your own. This one right here. We're going to set that to typical. Let me talk to you a little bit about purge policy. This setting has to do with removing old records and messages. So, like, for example, if you've been kind of taking a look at your dashboard from time to time, and don't worry if you haven't been, it's okay. Some people sometimes reach out and they're like, oh, I haven't done anything with it in a while from last year, and that's fine. But some folks have kind of poked around in there, and if you see this message that says like the message for this error is no longer available, it has to do with this, right? So so this cleanup, there's a cleanup that usually happens about every 5 days or so, and there's not apparently a huge range, is my understanding, between seldom and aggressive. But the aggressive setting would keep the fewest number of records or days. But again, there's not a huge range, so we're just gonna go with typical. For right now, and you could change that. It probably wouldn't hurt anything, but that's just what we're going to pick. For simultaneous connections, we're going to, in most cases, we're going to do 25. This is just kind of a safe number for everybody. That is something that you could experiment with, but this is actually the number of JSON records that can be sent at a given time for a single connection to the Ed-Fi ODS. Okay, so by default, the setting is probably, actually, when you look in here, it might say 5, meaning that PowerSchool would send up to 5 JSON records at a time through the API. So 25 basically is probably a safe number to use here for everybody. All right, and when we see later the data publishing dashboard, you'll notice that when data is queued in the publishing column, when we get there on the dashboard, it will try to publish up as many records. It will try to publish that many records that we've put here for simultaneous connections at a time. Okay, so, all right, we're going to keep moving down here. All right, so this is one of the first places where we need to put in, or it's the first place where we need to put in some of our credentials. So the data exchange URL. So I'm not actually going to put in the full URL right now. And when we get to actually showing how to push data, I'm going to switch over to a different profile and possibly even a different server for that. But just to kind of show you what you would put in there, there's going to be a URL that's part of your credentials, and it's going to end in something like this, org-data-v3, okay? And so in our documentation, we're going to instruct you to delete this last part, okay? And then you're going to copy and paste the exact same thing into the authentication URL below. Okay, so it will end in a /. That's kind of important. It seems like a little thing, but if you don't have that, then it won't work.
And Wendy, those URLs, are they unique for each district? Is that right?
They are, yes. And that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to put one here in case somebody was taking really excellent notes and they ended up having one that wasn't correct for their district. Very good question. All right.
And those will be provided, those unique URLs will come with the keys and secrets and the credentials. That's right.
They will, yes. And just again, a reminder about that, however they're delivered to you, we found that this is just one of those important things to note. If they were copied and pasted elsewhere, and like if you pasted it into a text file and then tried to copy and paste again from that, it typically didn't work, and that's probably a good thing, right? It's like but it's for security. So however you receive those, you're just going to copy, I would have like another tab open and just copy and paste directly into here. All right, now down here, you'll notice we have school years. So if you are on the correct state, or the minimum, I should say, state reporting version that we had here in these slides, and I think we could share those if you guys needed them, then you should have this 21-22 option. If you note that you don't have that, then check your state reporting version, okay? And that's probably it. So you're just going to click the 1 year, okay? So we're doing this connection by year. And then for the service options down here below, we have these checked. We're going to leave those checked. And then we're going to click save. I'm actually not going to click save right here because, again, I don't have a full URL. But what I will do is I'm going to go back over to, so forgive me for a second, I'm going to switch over to a different PowerSchool instance here. Sorry, I should have had the correct screen pulled up just to show you very, very quickly what it looks like when you put in your key and secret. Okay, so if I went to general setup, okay, you would then go to configure. Okay, I'm just going to flash that up real quick. You're going to have LEA enabled on, and then you would have your key and your secret there. You would save. It's going to be successful. You can close that, and you're going to save your page again. All right, the next thing that you're going to do now that you've got a successful connection, and if you don't, we have some troubleshooting tips for you. Usually, we would just suggest try it again. And if that doesn't work, that could actually be several things. So that might be a point at which you would want to reach out to our team. But sometimes, just kind of check to make sure everything was copied and pasted with no spaces, and try it again, and sometimes that will just do it for you. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go over to our dashboard. So what should happen is if you didn't have this already, there should be this data exchange section in your navigation that has a link to your dashboard. Now, I'm actually going to take a minute to go ahead and let me go back. I'm going to delete this sort of sample profile that I created and re-enable the previous one because I don't want to create confusion since we already had one created. So forgive me, give me 1 second really quickly just to do that. And then we'll see what the dashboard looks like. All right, so I'm going to re-enable this one. I'm actually going to delete that second one there, okay, just to avoid confusion. Am I sure? Yes, I'm going to delete it. And that should update in a second. Let me try that one more time sometimes. All right. Oh, you know what? It's going to make me, I forgot about this. It's going to make me disable it before I can delete, I think. Yeah, let's try that. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to go over to this dashboard because I know this connection has been established. Oh no. Okay. Deleted probably the wrong one. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the profile that's over here. So so your dashboard is going to be named with the naming convention that you used. And when you pull it up, you're not going to have all this here yet because you're going to need to do a few things first. You're going to have a lot of zeros in all these columns. So the first thing that we'll need to do is some downloads. So you'll notice up here we have descriptors, common codes, and state courses. And so what these are basically, and Wyatt, you can tell me if there's a better way to describe this, but I think of it as like a checkpoint for data that's coming up to the ODS. So like if is that kind of?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the descriptors are the common code sets that we use across the state to keep the data standard in the district ODSs. So, you know, a value of Hispanic for the federal ethnicity is translated from PowerSchool to, you know, whatever descriptor that Josh created in EdFi. And so those descriptors that Josh created in EdFi are actually downloaded to your PowerSchool instance when you click that Run Now button. And what happens then is that all the different values for the fields in PowerSchool are checked against those descriptors. And if the mapping exists between the PowerSchool value and the EdFi descriptor, then the data is actually moved up to the ODS and translated to the EdFi descriptor. So, you know, if in the case of the federal ethnicity code, if Hispanic in EdFi was actually, let's just say HISP rather than the full word Hispanic, what would happen would be if you click the checkbox for Hispanic in PowerSchool, it would say, hey, is that value what we're expecting is the descriptor for HISP? And if so, it would move the data up. If you had entered a value in PowerSchool of like maybe misspelled Hispanic, put an extra E or put an E in there somewhere, it would say, no, actually that value isn't mapped to EdFi, so the record's not going to move to the ODS. And the same thing with the state courses, right? We've got a common set of courses across the state, and we load those into an ODS. And when you click that download button or the Run Now button over there, it downloads them into your PowerSchool instance and does a check before the data is moved to the ODS. So if you have maybe one of your crazy counselors set up a state course for homeroom that was 0899 or something like that. And so when those data tried to publish to your district ODS, the check would be there to say, hey, actually, that's not included in the list of courses in South Carolina. So that record's not going to move to your ODS. So it's basically a function, kind of a level 1 data validation is how I would describe it.
And Wyatt, I think Deborah had a good question. She says, will lettercase matter capital versus lowercase?
So that's a really interesting question because in Oracle, case sensitivity is treated differently than some installations or permutations of SQL or Microsoft SQL. So that's one of the things that we're going to have to pay close attention to. I think that we've seen some errors in some places that that are sometimes non-errors, and one of the cases that I like to highlight is there was a school that set up different sections. They called different, what was it, different periods or different periods, I think. No, it's different sections, and one of them had like a capital P and the other one had a lowercase p, and those were two distinct things in the school. But when the data was pressed from Oracle to a SQL database, the SQL said, hey, that's actually a duplicate because the SQL database wasn't set up to handle case sensitivity. So you know, we looked at it and we said, well, is this an issue with the data? Is this a problem with the data? And we said, no, it's actually common for it. It may be common for districts and schools to do this, right? And we don't want to have the data system, you know, as much as we can possibly try not to have the data system impact the business operations in the school district or school. So this is just something that we're going to run into in the future, and we're just going to have to work through. So thanks for the question, Deborah. It's a good one, and there's a lot of nuance to it that we're just going to have to sort through as we move forward.
Definitely. Yeah, and that Wyatt gave a really good explanation here. And so we're just gonna, right here, we're gonna just do this. We're gonna hit run now on these. So you'll notice these have already been run, but hopefully, let's see, if we do this, we'll see if it behaves as usual. Yep, so usually what happens is, this is kind of funny, it says successfully completed, but you don't see any change. So we'll just wait a second and refresh, and then see if there's a change. Yeah, okay, so if we look in that downloading column, you'll see that these descriptors that Wyatt was talking about are downloading, and this usually takes like a few minutes. So I won't make you all, you know, sit here. We'll kind of look at some other things, but we can also go ahead and do the same thing for state courses. Okay, so we can click run now. Same thing, we get this little message. It says it's done, and sometimes people see that and they say, well, nothing changed. So just wait a second and refresh. And you probably gathered, just listening to Wyatt's explanation of what's going on here, we're not going to be successful at trying to publish these things until those two categories are downloaded. So we have to do that first. We can't just kind of randomly start. I mean, we can push these buttons, but nothing will really happen until we've done this. So once those have completed downloading, we're just about ready to start to publish categories. There is another step, however, that we didn't ask you all to take when we did EdFi onboarding that we're adding in because it will help things publish more smoothly, and that is called code set mapping. And so while it's doing this, we can move away from this, we can navigate away, and it will continue, so that's fine. I'm actually going to show you guys, and I may go back over here. Let's see. I know that I kind of messed this one up over here, but we can still do the code set mapping. All right, so to do our code set mapping, we're going to navigate away from that dashboard for a minute. We definitely recommend doing this before you publish. Okay, so you can do it after you've downloaded. You can really do it before you've downloaded, but this is a good time to remember to do it. So we're going to go back to system and back to that data exchange section that we were in before. And you'll notice there are two links here that start with code set mapping. One says code set mappings, and the other is code set mappings other. And in the description, it says associate local code values with downloaded values, right? The ones that we were just downloading for publishing. And then right here, well, actually, so therefore, yeah, we have to do the downloading first. Associate local code values with related data for publishing. So we're going to do both of these. This is kind of I'm just going to say like an annoying step, but it should just be a one-time step. And we'll show you what a few of the code set mappings look like. So that you can see what's required there. All right, so here's one that's been done. All right, this is, you'll notice we have this code set mappings page that comes up when we clicked on that link. We have our profile selected here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you guys, we're going to start by looking at entry code because this one's kind of short. And let's imagine that there was nothing here. Let me change that. Okay, so our code set that we're looking at is entry code descriptors. And our description says, again, defines the process by which a student enters a school during a given academic session. Okay, so it's describing which set we're looking at. So here we have our PowerSchool code. So this is E or EEI. Okay, we have the description of what that is. And then we have this drop down. Now this one's interesting on this server. Hopefully you're not going to see these two different namespaces here. You'll notice that one, it looks like our website, right, for South Carolina Department of Ed. We'll say that's South Carolina namespace codes. And we have another one that's EdFi namespace codes. But if you were to see both of those, the thing to do would be to look at the code. And if there's something that's identical, just pick that, right? So you see why I said it's kind of annoying because it seems like, oh, why do I have to do this? But actually it helps to ensure that things that could vary within a district, that they do in fact match up appropriately. So we select E, we select EEI, easy. So that one was a pretty easy one, and then I can save that. Okay, let's take another look at a different one that's not really long, but that might be a little bit harder because the matchup is not as straightforward. Okay, so in some cases, in the mapping that was done, a South Carolina namespace was used, and in those cases, typically it will be a one-to-one selection. But sometimes, if EdFi was used, especially, then it might not always be one-to-one, but hopefully it's straightforward enough to be able to say, okay, this is a reasonable selection for my district. So if you go to holiday here, for example, okay, oh, well, that's good. Okay, there's a holiday. All right. Teacher in service professional development. Okay, well, that's not an instructional day. Okay, why don't we say that's a teacher only day because teachers are clearly doing something on that day. Okay, we've got school day. Okay, that's an instructional day. Vacation, there's not really a word vacation here. We could call that a holiday. And then we have weather, and we do have a weather day. Okay, so that one, it was not quite as straightforward, but we were still able to make those selections there. And we'll try to have as much guidance for you as possible in our documentation to help with this piece, okay?
Wendy, can we pause there for a quick second?
Sure.
So we're expecting an updated descriptor list. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So I think Buster noticed a duplicate in one of the categories, and we're also, I think, updating, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, we're updating some of the existing descriptors. So what that means is that I think districts should hold off on doing this kind of code set mapping until we give the thumbs up. Would you disagree?
I don't disagree at all. I think that's a good idea, unless Josh disagrees.
No, I would say go ahead and wait until you get information from us, basically giving you like a descriptor version set. So when we're ready to really start pushing data into the ODSs, we'll probably have like a descriptors version 1 available, and that'll be the first time we really want everyone to go in and select the code set mapping.
Okay, good to know. For sure. And would you all recommend that they also wait to try publishing, or to go ahead and try that and see how it goes without the mapping? The code set mapping?
Go ahead, Josh.
Without the code set mapping, you are they will have errors coming through. If they are gonna push data, just expect anytime any data that's being pushed that has an associated code set mapping, like behavior or incidences, or some of the terms, will probably have errors.
Okay, good to know.
So what we'll do is we'll try to align the issuing of credentials with the final set of descriptors for this year specific ODS. Will that work, Josh?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Well, thank you y'all for pausing me on that. There's one other thing that I do want to just show that's sort of like a mechanical thing in terms of how these work, if y'all don't mind, before we totally leave code set mappings. So if you go to code set mappings, when the time comes, okay, there is this functionality you probably want to know about. Let's say, for example, if we're choosing operational status, notice how these are all empty. Let's just say, for example, what if these were all active schools? Okay, if they were, or even if most of them were, you could select active and click this autofill button, say yes, we want to do this, and that makes it a little bit faster in situations like that. And then, if this one was no longer active, we could change that or something if it's closed or what have you. So I'll just change that back to active and then save that. Okay, is there anything else on code set mappings that we need to talk about before we?
I don't think so. There's a question if the code set mapping will carry over to a new profile, and I don't think we've gotten a firm answer on that and haven't tested it out yet. So that one's a question mark, Buster, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, that is a really good question. We'll make sure that we get that we get clarity on that one. Okay, great. So I'm going to come back over here. All right. So once, I guess either once we've done our code set mapping, or even if we're asking you all to hold on that, we can still come back over to our dashboard, and we're going to look at basically how to publish data to the ODS. So that's where we are now, very close to the end. And so for these categories for published data here, you can either click Run Now and just kind of let them go in order, or if you prefer, you can go one at a time. And I think kind of what we've done in the past is, if we were working with the district, walking them through this during the day, just to be safe, we let them just go one at a time, because we were afraid that maybe if they click Run All and it's in the middle of a school day, if things are taking a long time, we didn't want to bog things down in your system. But you could, if you were doing this on a Friday afternoon and you just wanted to hit Run All, that would be fine. You'll notice here that, and actually let me refresh this to see if these yeses go away here. Yeah, okay, so let me pause really quickly and back up for just a second. Notice, by the way, that our descriptors and state courses that we were downloading, they have completed. How do you know that? Downloading, it went from no to yes when it was downloading, and then it went back to no when it was finished, okay? And then you'll notice you have a number here in downloaded. So that would be good to be aware of. You just refresh, right? You'll see that I just did that to make sure of that. So what we could do, for example, if we wanted to publish just one of these, I could click Run Now, and you're going to get this parameter selection drop down. The first time that you do this, you just want to click Publish All. Okay, so it says Run Checks and Publish All Valid Data. You'll notice that you have some other options here that might be interesting to you later. If you had, if there happened to be an error that was something that could be corrected, and you wanted to just try publishing the ones that you corrected later on, so you could click Publish Errors or Retry Errors, or so there are other options, but for right now, you would just do Publish All and Submit. And then again, this will take a minute, probably longer than it took the descriptors to download and the state courses. So, we won't sit here and just sort of watch the pot boil, so to speak, but you can see the processing has changed to waiting, and then eventually you might have something in dependency. So my understanding is that if something is sort of stuck in dependencies, that maybe there's a checkpoint that PowerSchool has that for whatever reason that data, it's like, nope, it can't continue to be published. And so if it gets past that point, then it's able to come over here and be published to the ODS. And then you're not going to have errors for something that's in dependency, but you would possibly if it moved beyond that. And let's say, for example, like Wyatt was saying, if there's a school that is not recognized based on the list that's in the ODS, then you might have an error for anything related to that. And so you could either click run all if you wanted to, same options. You would click Publish All if you made that selection, or you could go one at a time. It's a little bit different down here at the bottom. these on-demand data categories, this attendance one might take a while, especially. You can also select run all and publish all if you wanted to, or you can click schedule and you could actually schedule these to push. I believe we're actually going to have these 4 categories scheduled to publish once a week, like on Saturday at 3 a.m. or something. So that will be something, you know, if you don't need it to be published faster, you know, more frequently than that, I should say, then you could do that. You could schedule, say, yes, I want to schedule this. And then you get this page where you can, again, select your, you know, publish changes, publish recent. You probably want to put maybe publish changes. And then, you know, you could either run it now or you could schedule and select your date and your start time, whether or not you want it to repeat weekly, monthly, daily, what have you. But we won't do that one just now. And what we're asking you all to do, you'll notice this in the documentation that you receive in February. We're asking that if you would, just so we can be as supportive as we can, and you know, in this process, anytime there's something, I know that for many of you, this looks familiar. You onboarded, but maybe you haven't seen this in a while, and so we just want to check in. If you don't mind, just sending us, you know, since there's no PII right here, like just sending us a screenshot of your dashboard once you've published, then we know, okay, they were able to successfully do that. That would be a super big help. Also, sometimes just, you know, if there are patterns that we might notice just kind of at first glance and looking at those, that can be helpful as well. But in just a minute, I will stop sharing screen maybe so we can have some Q&A. Is there anything else while I have this up that anyone would like to see? For the good of the group, I know we don't have a ton of time. I want to leave some time for level data to be able to share as well. Okay.
Yeah, Wendy, I've been looking at the chat. I think we're good. And then,
Okay.
you know, if anybody has specific questions, we'll go ahead and enter them in the chat and get to them after Nina presents. Nina, how are you doing? Are you able to present? Yeah,
Yep.
I see it now.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me attend today to kind of show off some of our newly released validations that we have. I'm going to focus on, we have early childhood and Read to Succeed validations that were recently released, and then I'll also give a little showcase of 3 validations that would be released with our Thursday weekly release this week. So I've been working closely with Taylor Seal at the SCDE to get some validations in place for early childhood and Read to Succeed. The goal for early childhood was to have these in place before your kindergarten registration. So we have our real-time field validations that I'll show you first, and then there's also some upcoming state data validations that go along with these as well. So first, for your pre-kindergarten students, 3 new fields are in place here for early childhood placement, days per week served, and tuition paid by parent or guardian. These validations here, they're going to be required for all pre-K students. So when the child is in pre-K, these cannot be blank. As soon as you fill them in, they will be green, good to go for any of the drop-down values for pre-K students. If these are populated for any student who's not in pre-K, it won't flag in error. So if your district does not clear out these values from year to year, as long as they can be in kindergarten and these can be filled in, and they're not going to flag in error as they're only required for pre-kindergarten students. To go along with these 3 real-time field validations, we have the corresponding state data validations that are currently in place. So it will flag the students, the pre-K students who are missing the days per week served, their early childhood placement, or the tuition paid by parent or guardian. Again, just like all of our other fixed screens, it'll have the description of the validation, the additional information button, and then the ability to use the drop-down menu to select a value, save your changes, and it'll populate that field on the individual student screen. Going to the kindergarten fields on the early childhood screen, you'll notice this child here, he is in kindergarten. So again, his pre-K values here, they're blank, but they're not going to flag an error because he's not a pre-K student. But you'll notice his kindergarten value down here is being flagged. And since the prior provider and prior class are dependent on the prior child care field, they're not flagging an error yet. But if we choose one of the drop downs here, you'll see that they now have to be populated because the prior child care field is populated. Some of the fields don't pertain, so if they're not, so like for the informal or home one, the prior class, of course, won't be there. The same thing with private. They're not going to have the provider there, they'll just have a class. And again, with the same thing with the, like it was for the pre-K fields, if these are populated once the student rolls to first grade, it will not flag an error if your district does not clear those fields on a year-to-year basis. We do have corresponding real-time field valid or state data validations that will be going along with these kindergarten fields. They're currently in development and should be released in the upcoming weeks. Moving to the Read to Succeed screen, I have a second grader here. And currently we have quite a few validations that we put in place. We are still working on the good cause exemptions area. Those are in development right now. But the ones that are currently released, we have the summer reading camp eligibility determination factor. If the invited to summer reading camp is checked, this is required to have a value. For the pre-assessment and post-assessment area here, if the pre-assessment tool is populated with a value of 1 to 6, it kind of sets off the rest of the validations here. So it's saying if a pre-assessment tool is selected and it doesn't equal not tested, a score is required. So once we populate with a score, it turns the validation green, good to go. We made this one here a warning for post-assessment tool because we realized that you're not going to have that post-assessment tool data information available at the time that you're putting in that pre-assessment information. So we'll just flag it in a warning saying it shouldn't be blank when the pre-assessment tool is populated. And then that way, when you come in and you populate the post-assessment tool, it goes, it'll turn to green. Note that if the post-assessment tool does not match the pre-assessment tool, it will flag an error because the post-assessment must match the same tool that was used for pre-assessment. Again, with the post-assessment score, because you might not have that information right away, we flagged it as a warning, just as a reminder that since the post-assessment tool is a value from 1 to 6, a score is needed. You'll notice that once the post-assessment tool had a value in it, these two fields down here at the bottom that are required for second or third graders flagged as an error because our student is in second grade. And you'll notice the warning on that one is if the post-assessment tool is a value of 1 to 6, this field is required if the student is in second or third grade. Again, like as with the fields on the early childhood screen, these fields down here at the bottom will only flag an error if they are blank for a second or third grade student. If they are blank for any other grade, it will not flag these fields in error. Were there any questions on any of the real-time field validations before I kind of give a little preview of what's being released later this week?
Nina, the only question is when will those validations be active in PowerSchool?
These real-time field validations are currently active, as well as these 3 state data validations. The other ones that I mentioned are in development, and I'm hoping to get them released in maybe the next 2 to 3 weeks.
All righty, thank you.
And just as a little preview of what's being released with our weekly Thursday release this week, there is a new state data validation for course sections missing instruction type. Since instruction type is now a required field, we are looking at those course sections that do not have an instruction type and are going to flag them in our validation. You'll see the conditions to resolve spell out the wording that is found in the SCDE documentation as to how to categorize those sections, and the dropdown has all of those corresponding values that are found on the course section setup screen. And then there are 2 that are being released on and this will be found on the courses tab. And the next 2 will be found on the reports lists tab. This one here is going to list all of your students who are in a state board approved virtual special program anytime during the current school year. What it's going to do is it's going to list the student, the date that their special program started and the date that it ended, and the count of the number of days they were enrolled in that program. If you see a student has a blank end date or an exit date, that lets you know that the student is currently enrolled in that program on their special program screen. Since this is a reports list, you have the option at the bottom to export this information out to a CSV, and you can sort. If you want to just look at those students who have active programs, you can then sort by exit date and group all of the blank dates together to see who is currently active in that program. And the same goes for those students who are enrolled in a temporary virtual instruction special program. It's formatted the same way, has the same functionality, it just flags those students in that temporary program. And these should be released with our weekly Thursday rule release this week. Any
Excellent. No more questions right now, Nina. I'll send them your way if we get anything in the interim. But we definitely appreciate everything you and the Level Data team do for inspiring high quality PowerSchool data. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you.
And I think that in terms of just kind of like the administrative function of this office hour webinar and the ones in the future. So I expect that it'll be a little bit more conversation centric in the future, and kind of like what an office hour is generally. But today we wanted to kind of go over the change to the EdFi ODS and operationalizing the 2022 ODS and the steps necessary to do that. So this one was a bit more instructional, but I imagine that in the future we'll have more room for questions and hopefully a lot more discussion. But we also intend, Nina, if you're willing, for you to keep coming back and kind of showing off the new stuff that's coming down the pipeline for Level Data.
Absolutely, I would be more than happy to do that.
Well, thank you. But let's see, before we wrap it up, I guess there's a couple questions in the chat. Thank you for the export option. Makes some corrections a lot easier. I think that's it, Nina. So some more appreciation for what y'all are doing. And as a reminder, the fix function on the instruction type will only work at the school level. Okay. So Wendy, any last words of advice or any kind of next steps for everyone who's attending or listening in to this recording in the future?
I think this is just about it for today. Just thank you everyone for coming. And like Wyatt said, I think in the future we do want these to give you more time to have conversation, but we definitely wanted to share this information. We are going to be having these office hours once a month for 2022. So we hope to see you in February. And those will be just like this time, there'll be that easy little registration, and we'll send out reminders via the listserv and our DM list. Feel free to forward them to anyone who you think might be interested.
Okay, and I'd also like to add that, you know, this series is a direct response to feedback that we received at EdTech, right? The feedback was, hey, can you have more of these types of informational webinars and discussion-based webinars? And, you know, also, can you try to provide communication and to-dos in a different format? And that's what you've been doing with the data collection digest, right?
Yeah, our team has tried to brainstorm some ideas, like Wyatt said, in response to that. So that's one thing, the data collection digest, and we also have sort of a PowerSchool admin Q&A, and so keep an eye out for those. Our website has recently changed, so you might have to figure out the navigation, but it shouldn't be hard to find all the things you normally access.
All right, thanks a lot, Wendy.
Great, thanks. Bye, everyone.